Hi, Bill. Thanks for
Rachel.
joining me this morning.
It's good to be here.
Well, we know that you've prepared some stuff for today, but before we get started, what I wanted to do is you've been an architect here in North Carolina for a very long time. And
Thanks, Rachel.
Before you dive into some of your insights and things that you've learned, can you give us like a 60-second elevator pitch of where your career has taken you?
Well, I started out without having worked at all as an intern when I graduated from graduate school, and was lucky enough to find a job in the recession of 1976. That was the Arab oil embargo period with the gas station lines, et cetera, et cetera. And I've worked in several firms and decided to hang up a shingle after about 10 years of learning how to do this, which was probably either too soon or too late, but did it anyway, and have been here in Greensboro since 1986, and grew the practice and experienced 3 recessions, and still here to tell about it. And it's been a pretty good ride. So I've learned a lot, and CPL has asked me to talk a little bit about what I have learned, and I know we're going to do that here this morning, and look forward to that.
Yeah. Well, I know that you have kind of 10 lessons learned, 10 keys to success that you've developed and thought about over kind of the last few months, specifically kind of putting together some of those thoughts. And what I think that's so nice about these 10 keys to success is that they're not just geared towards architects. They're really multidisciplinary, geared towards the construction and the design industry. But I think there's some really interesting thoughts in there that kind of transcend beyond that and apply to a lot of people in different careers as well.
Well, when they asked me to put together my top 10 items, if you will, which is somewhat arbitrary, I think you can thank David Letterman for that. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to talk about roof flashings or problems with HVAC systems, et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to really do a more broad brush and really keep it across discipline list of items that folks could relate to. And it's not a checklist, and it's certainly not something that I'm dictating to people. They're sort of like things that if I had to do it over again, these things, if I could have learned these things sooner rather than later, that could have helped me in my career. Mm-hmm. And I hope folks can maybe, it's sort of like a sermon. If there are 3 things you get out of it, maybe that's good. Mm-hmm. So not everything's going to apply or relate to what people are doing, but, I came up with these 10 items to talk about. So,
you ready to dive in?
Sure, let's go.
All right. So the first one is enjoy the challenges of your work.
Yes. I did not use the term fun because it's not fun all the time. It's challenging a lot. Folks ask me, well, why do you want to be an architect? Well, I was good at math. Well, I'm really not very good at math. Oh, you like to draw? Well, yeah, I do like to draw. But the challenges of practicing architecture are just so varied. On any given day, you're dealing with construction issues. You're dealing with legal issues, and it's not just math or art. In fact, there's a big difference between design and art, but that's for another day. But the challenges are so varied that it can be fun. You don't get bored. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. It's not boring. It's a lot of fun to get up and get going and deal with those challenges, but they will occur.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important to find something that you're really passionate about and do something that you're really passionate about, because it makes it not feel like work every day.
Yeah. And practicing architecture's, in my opinion, is not really about brick and mortar most of the time. It's about people. And that's a lesson that a lot of young folks need to get out from underneath that computer. Mm-hmm. They're so talented, so skilled with those issues that it's difficult for them to be employed, if you will, and get away from the computer, because I had a meeting yesterday and it was all about people. We had a particular design problem, but we solved it by getting together and talking about it. So anyway, that's what it's about.
Well, it ties in well to your second key, which is the profession is a team sport. Yes.
And I don't like sports metaphors, to speak of a lot, but once in the old days, there was a term, management by walking around, MBWA. And that's designed by walking around is a good thing, because, and again, in this session yesterday, folks had run off and were trying to solve something, and I would get an email and it was like, this person submitted this and this other person suggested that, and I just happened to be physically in the place where I could put 2 or 3 people together, and it worked well. Mm-hmm. But you can't do it by yourself. There's just, and anybody that thinks they are the smartest person in the room they need some help. So the other way around, if we're going to talk about a sports analogy, though, is that the weakest player on the team needs coaching. Mm-hmm. So if you can be a coach from time to time, that's a good thing too.
Yeah. I think what also is really interesting is that about 3 years into opening up your own practice, you brought on Tom Phoenix, who's a mechanical engineer, and made the practice multidisciplinary, which was unique then and is still unique now for especially a small firm, not a large 50-plus person firm, to have different disciplines. Yeah. What kind of was the thought behind that?
Well, I had been lucky enough to have worked in a firm that it was somewhat larger than we were at the time, but still relatively small to be a cross-disciplinary firm, multidisciplinary firm. And quite frankly, the consulting engineers in our area weren't that great. And I had been spoiled by being able to manage by walking around and get up and go see Tom Phoenix and ask him his opinion, et cetera, et cetera. And you just need to be able to do that. Otherwise, you get something designed and the mechanical rooms are large enough, and so the air handling units won't fit. So you have to go back to the computer and rework, and it's a collaborative process. So team sport.
Your third key is take the initiative within your comfort zone.
You have to grow. You have to get out of your comfort zone. This interview right now is sort of outside of my comfort zone. So to grow, you have to get out, but you have to do it. You have to be careful when you're outside of your comfort zone. There has to be a safety net. And there are senior people in the organizations that would be willing to collaborate with you and help you. But you need to, again, don't try to do too much. Mm-hmm. Get outside your zone, but know you're outside the zone, and that you're in a danger zone, could be. So know when to pull back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of that is about putting yourself in those situations that get yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and the construction industry is a tough world. There are a lot of guys in the construction industry that are not sensitive to growing and collaborating, and so you have to deal with that. You have to get outside your comfort zone and deal with those things. Yeah.
You become more confident by being in those different situations.
Well, you learn a lot more, I think, from your mistakes, and certainly if you're human, you're going to make mistakes. Just make small ones. Don't make you don't want any catastrophic situations there. So anyway.
The fourth key, anticipate and resolve issues when they're first encountered.
Well, I think one of the subcategories there is that procrastination never solved anything. I like to go to bed at night and have a good night's sleep, not wake up in the middle of the night with a particular issue, etc. So take it on. It's a challenge. It goes back to the first one we talked about. Time management. Everybody talks about time management, but you can't manage time. But you need to prioritize those things and deal with challenges when they come up, and don't put them on the corner of your desk and forget about them, because that makes it even worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the hardest things is it's easy to check the easy items off your task list, but those ones that you know are going to really challenge you and put you outside your comfort zone tend to be the ones that you tend to procrastinate on too.
Yes. So keeping a list, though, is the first start. A lot of folks don't do that, but don't procrastinate. It just makes matters worse.
Yeah. Practice proactive project and design management regardless of your discipline.
Well, how can I say this? When you're in the design profession, you are asked to solve problems, not create them. And as you learn to solve those problems, hopefully you get better at it, and you can predict some of those things. For example, not to get too much into architecture, but check the building code early. Know what occupancy your classification is. So many times you want to jump in there and design something. It's the Taj Mahal all over again. Here we go. But everything has to be built and has to be code, and life safety as an architect, that's certainly probably the most dominant element in our profession relative to licensure and protecting the public, what we do. And sometimes people forget to check the code early on, or particularly the zoning ordinance early on. Is there an overlay zone that can have some impact on the configuration of the site and or the building, et cetera, et cetera. So those jurisdictional issues are important and not a lot of fun to deal with, but they need to be at the top of one of your lists, if you will. Being proactive. Yeah. That's what I mean by that.
I always like to say that architects and designers in general are glorified problem solvers. And sometimes I do think we create problems in order to solve them. And so those kind of vary in complexity, for sure.
Yep. There's a lot of truth in being creative in negative ways. It's not a game, but it's a mental kind of game that people could play. And they say, oh, well, I'll get to that. That's not a big deal, but it could be a big deal.
Your next key is exceed your client's expectations. And in this one, you put clients in quotes.
Yes.
So tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, clients aren't just, I mean, we all have clients other than the folks that sign our checks, when we submit an invoice. I have clients here in the office that are depending on me to help them with something. I'm a client of a lot of other folks, and sometimes I feel like I'm getting the short end of, I'm not being served as their client as best as I could be. There are other priorities. I understand that. I'm the same way. But it's again, in thinking of a multidisciplinary approach to design, we all have other clients out there in other disciplines, and it all has to work together for a design to come together and meet the client's expectations. The clients that do sign out to pay us for our invoices, but also our clients that are in the construction industry. The contractors are, they're pretty savvy business people, sometimes a lot more savvy business people than architects and engineers are, and designers. So you have to anticipate how savvy those folks are. I mean, don't take people for granted or don't underrate them. There are lots of clients out there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of the things that helps people that you've learned exceed those expectations are kind of having a positive attitude, confidence, and honesty with those people.
Yeah. Don't play games. If somebody catches you with something, I'll never forget, early on, I was at a city council meeting and there was a minor little problem that had come up, and one of the city council persons called me on it, and I said, "You're right, that's a problem. We're going to fix it. I appreciate you pointing that out. I agree with you." Rather than trying to defend it, it wasn't a defensible position, which is also on my list somewhere down the line here. But just be honest. You're a human. I mean, everybody has good days and bad days. So, yeah.
And you build a more trusting relationship with those clients, whoever they may be, if there is that honesty and those clear expectations.
Trusted advisor. Mm-hmm. And if they catch you in too many falsehoods, you're going to ruin that. You can't be a trusted advisor and be untruthful. Mm-hmm. You got to be really smart to lie and get away with it. I'm not that smart. Yep, that's a problem. We got to fix it. Yeah.
Number 7, details are important. Was there a particular kind of details that you had in mind when you read this one?
Well, there's the old cliche about don't sweat the details, but as a designer, as a professional designer, as opposed to an artist, and I can talk about artists because my brother's an artist and he's a very talented guy, a very creative guy, but he's an artist as opposed to a designer. And as a designer, you're asked to solve problems which require a detailed approach. Engineering, in a lot of ways, is more detailed, if you take that term literally, than architecture in some cases, although architecture is rather detail-oriented when it comes to life safety issues and collaboration with all the other disciplines and dealing with construction industries and protocols and those things. But it's not, I don't mean to, details in our world, folks sometimes think, well, it's it's a roofing detail, or it's a flooring detail, or it's some ANSI requirement in a restroom. That's one level of detail, but they're every day we go back to challenges, and there are details that relate to how to solve those challenges. Mm-hmm. And the details are important.
Number 8, cost-conscious design is generally a client's concern.
Yeah, we had a consultant, a management consultant that we worked with for a couple of years back when, and we actually surveyed our outside clients and kept it pretty short, but we asked them to rank, what their expectations were in terms of us and whether we were meeting their expectations. And it was really kind of interesting, and it was done by a third party. So that was perhaps a better way of doing it. And the number one thing that came out was, you all don't always listen to us about cost. And over the years, there have just been things that, why? Over and over again, do we have to we put something in and then we have to take it out. And we put it back in on the next job and we have to take it out. And after about the third time, it's like, why do we do that anymore? I mean, and I've never had a client tell me, I don't care what it costs, this is what I want. And if they told me that, I don't think I'd believe them. I'd be more worried about that, because they're either really naive or clueless and have no idea what things really do cost out there. And although I think sometimes maybe people in our industry don't care or aren't worried about those kind of things. My stock has never risen within the design world to the point that I don't care about cost. Mm-hmm. I do care about cost. So,
well, and I think kind of related to this point, what you and I have done a lot of recently over the last 3 to 4 years is a lot of feasibility studies, where we will do community engagement, we'll do conceptual design, we'll do a cost estimate, but we'll go beyond that and do project budget and helping the client with financing, which I think relates a lot back to this one too, where it's really about that holistic approach for them. Not just the cost-conscious design piece, but really how can we help them make this project happen to start with?
Well, and I think too, we had coined the phrase financial modeling, which is beyond estimating. And of course, our liability insurance friends don't want us to use words like estimates. Those are opinions of probable cost.
That comes in later on your list.
Yes. So the financial modeling approach uses different, or has different attributes, as you had alluded to there, Rachel. But the financial modeling, I think, is a good term in that, with the Revit modeling and the graphic modeling and those new tools that are relatively new tools that are out there. If you've been doing this for 45 years, they're relatively new. But I just think that being conscious every time you draw a line or every time you do a wall section or you want to pick a particular material, you need to know what those things cost. And there's always the old good, better, best. And you don't always start with the best. And if you do, you're going to have to ultimately scale it back anyway. So communicate with your clients, both external and internal, and you don't always grab the most expensive thing off the shelf.
So speaking of the cost estimating and the term estimating, that ties into the 9th key, which is respect and understand the legal consequences within the design profession and construction industry. Practice
in a paranoid state, I think, is one
That's
of the...
That's your number 10.
That's number 10. Yeah, you have to have everything you do needs to be defensible. You are a professional. You are a trusted advisor. You can't just do things on a whim. You're working for someone and with someone. In fact, I like that better. I like to work with people more than I do for people. And you have to earn that trust, and you have to be good at those kinds of things. And the legal issues, just words that people use, and putting things in writing. And putting things in writing includes email. And the legal issues about, just the verbs that you use in terms of, and who, for example, recommends it. It's not, well, as the architect, I recommend such and such, so and so. It's more like, well, I've done appropriate research and I have 3 sources, and those sources tell me that a reasonable approach here would be to do so and so, as opposed to, I'm the architect and I think you need to do it this way. Totally different. That's what I mean by a defensible position, is do your homework, but present it appropriately and use the right language.
I went to a risk management seminar hosted through AIA Charlotte a few years ago, and those were really the 2 of the key takeaways. Was one is all your communication is discoverable. Mm-hmm. So that is email, that's everything else. So, and that's good and bad. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is that words really matter. So the term estimate, the term shall or should or that those really matter. And so read and reread your emails or other things before you send them.
We don't do inspections.
Correct.
We provide field observations. And, there are books written on that sort of thing. I think one of the more interesting seminars that I went to once upon a time was for contractors in putting together change orders. It's nice to sit there and get into the enemy camp every now and then. And that was eye-opening to go to an AGC seminar and listen to that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Our friends are in the construction industry, by the way.
So the last one we kind of already talked about a little bit, that practice in a paranoid state.
Yeah. And I think at the very bottom bullet there, it probably says something like Murphy was an optimist. Mm-hmm. Murphy, if anything can go wrong, it will. And so you just have to learn to deal with that. And it's it goes back to number 1 about enjoy the challenges. And if you get really good at it, you know what those challenges are going to be, mm-hmm. But it takes making some mistakes. This list is not, you do these 10, this is not a checklist. This isn't a requirement. This isn't a test. It's just things that I have learned that maybe could help somebody to take these things to heart and see how they apply in their world. I've enjoyed the ride. Yeah, it's been good.
Well, thank you for sharing all of your insights here with everyone. It's been a pleasure working with you over the last few years. So definitely a lot of things to learn from those.
Well, it's never been dull. And Rachel, I've enjoyed working with you as well. The whole transition with CPL and the merger, there was a lot of stress about that when we made that decision, but it's been really good. And I hope that there will be something that good comes out of this session here today. And as I tell folks, I may be retiring, but I'm not falling off the face of the earth. If there's someone out there that needs a specific task to be done, I'm available. I'm not going to get into project management again, you know. So, but I'm here if you need me.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.